Hey guys, good morning and welcome back to another great episode of Furman Transformation Podcast. We have got a very cool topic for today. It's going to be titled Democratization as a Goal. Now, this topic is going to be another thinker. It's going to get you thinking in some different ways that you're not used to thinking. And the goal of this for me is to essentially put out a new theme that you can think about and figure out how to incorporate this into your business model, because I believe that if you understand this theme, that there is a tremendous need to satisfy it, and it is being satisfied in many ways, but may not be currently getting satisfied in the way of your specific vertical, of your specific domain. It may not be being done. So I think it's a good differentiator, as well as just something that you can incorporate that will really create a lot of demand, or ultimately create an enormous amount of demand for your product. So, and also do a lot of good in the world and take us to a higher level. And I'll kind of go into that a little bit more. So, democratization as a goal. What do I mean by democratization as a goal? That's the question. So, democratization. You may have heard that this term before. It gets thrown around a lot in nowadays in tech. This idea where you're democratizing things. It simply means that you're driving the cost very, very far down to the point where it is easily accessible to the masses. So whether that be medical technology or computing technology, whatever it is, taking something that used to be very, very expensive and only essentially really accessible to maybe the top 1%, or the very, very high income earners, and making it very accessible to the masses and the mass population, and everybody in our world, so that everybody can capitalize on these advancements. Now, this is not it's important to realize this is not, we're not talking about democratization. It's not the same thing as saying, in the political sense, democracy versus, sorry, not democracy, but Democratic versus Republican. That's not the same. It's a different concept to say that. And I'm not here to have any kind of political talks, but it is interesting to see how, first of all, how I'll just say how it is interesting that how political divides seem to make us feel much more divided than we actually are. And I think a lot of that is orchestrated and done by the major media outlets, the far left and the far right. And when in reality, we're really much, much more similar than we give ourselves credit for. But that's one thing that's interesting to me. Now, if you look at actually this we talked about a little bit from a capitalistic standpoint, what democratization means. But if you look at it from a political standpoint, it's interesting because with the capitalist principle of democratization, essentially we will end up living in, I guess, what you could call a more democratic world. But essentially what this would allow us to do is not only, we're changing the idea of what it means to be Democratic versus Republican is also something that would shift with this idea, because the main idea of Democratic is, we're gonna give you certain things to survive, and then if you want extras, you got to work for them. And Republicans say, well, we're not going to give you anything. We want to give you very little, and this way that's your motivator to succeed. Well, this essentially, with this principle, democratization, we're not saying, oh, the government should give you anything. That's not what I mean by democratization. What this means is that we actually are able to capitalistically provide goods that are basic human needs. For example, your food, your water, your shelter, things that are basic human needs. And those will essentially, with the help of information technology, are actually becoming going to become basic givens. So it will actually become so cheap to have these basic needs that the basic needs ultimately will not be a factor anymore. So what it will actually allow us to do is to reach a higher place. In other words, it's better that the basic needs are provided, because if you look at it from the standpoint of Maslow's hierarchy, which is it was a psychological principle proposed by Abraham Maslow in 1943. It's essentially a pyramid. If you can imagine a pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid, as you move up, it goes through certain different psychological needs of a human being. It starts down at the bottom with basic psychological needs. So the basic things we need to survive are food and water, right? Basic things, we need nourishment for our bodies. Okay, then you've got safety. We need, predictable 9 to 5s. We need shelter. We need to feel safe. We need to feel like our life has some level of predictability to it, right? So that's a step up from psychological. Then you've got love and belonging, right? Then you've got esteem. Okay, at the top of that ladder, the top of that pyramid is self-actualization. So what this essentially means is that most people now, from a capitalistic standpoint, most people are really, many people unfortunately aren't meeting those psychological and safety needs. Still, I mean, a vast majority of us are. We have jobs, we have income, so yeah, we meet those things, and we're essentially working for maybe love and belonging and esteem. Very, very few of us actually get to self-actualization because we're sacrificing that for the basic psychological, or say physiological and safety needs, and then some of us don't even have those. So essentially, what this allows us to do, if you can think about from the perspective of being an entrepreneur, you can think about the fact that there is a tremendous demand to now start to actually move up this hierarchy, this psychological hierarchy of needs, right? To where if the psychological and the safety needs are met, then we're able to reach love and belonging and esteem easier. If those are met as well, then we're actually able to reach self-actualization and look at the world and actually become self-aware in ourselves and actually go to a place in our heads where we're not necessarily just working for survival. We're working for a much higher higher purpose, a higher satisfaction that comes from self-actualization, that only comes from the top of that pyramid. So if we can, as entrepreneurs, solve the problem of basic human needs not being met, and then even go a step further and provide, have even more abstract things democratized, we can allow, first of all, consumption of those on a massive scale. And any company that does that is going to have massive scale. And they're gonna drown out all their other competition because nobody else will be able to hit those price points. But if we can do that, and many of these things can be done now with information technology, we can not only do that, but also allow for our entire civilization to reach and evolve, reach a higher level of consciousness, and reach that top of the pyramid for the self-actualization. So rather than working to survive, we're going to be working to self-actualize. Okay? That's a big concept. If you can think about that for a second, that is a huge concept. So not only that you're doing something great for the world, but understand that this right now is a huge need. And I think if you can apply this, if you can understand how it applies to your business particularly, I think this is a gold mine of potential. Now, I'll give you a couple examples so that it's not all intangible, so you can actually understand what we're talking about here. If you're not following so far, I'll give you some examples. Okay, examples of this are, again, everything is becoming an information technology, meaning everything can be done cheaper, more efficiently, quicker, faster. You see this happening everywhere. Right, I'll give you a couple perfect examples. Well, obviously, we know Amazon is doing tremendous things to cut price points, but you want to look even deeper than that. Look at 3D. We're now developing 3D printed food, where ultimately you're going to be able to literally pick what you want on a computer, pick a piece of meat and actually literally be able to 3D print that piece of meat out with stem cells. That is an actual technology that's being worked on right now. We will have maybe in the next 5-10 years. Okay, printing food out for pennies per pound. Okay, extremely cheap. Okay, vertical agriculture, same concept, different concept, but also making food much cheaper. Right? Eventually we'll have 3D printed clothes. So your clothes will be a digital commodity. You'll be able to print them out for pennies per pound as well. Okay. 3D printed houses. It's extremely expensive to build houses now because you have the labor costs and all the materials that go into it. Well, imagine now that you cut all that labor cost out and you can actually 3D print different modules of a house and literally snap them together, as you've seen in some cases in Asia right now. This is where we're moving. Everything is becoming digital and it's becoming democratized. So forget about just how it's going to do great things for humanity, because that's to take us all to a higher level. Just think from an entrepreneur's standpoint, the amazing need, the amazing demand that this has right now, and that is a blanket need. I don't care what industry you're in. I don't care what product or service you have. If you can democratize it, if you can find a way to get that product or service into everybody's hands that needs it, because the price point is right, and you've allowed for that to happen, and you figured out how to digitally make that happen, and used IT to make that work for you, you're going to flush out all the competition. You're going to have a tremendous economy of scale. So I think that's a theme to really focus on today: is how can we further democratize what we're doing in a massive way, right? I'll give you another example of it. Napster was a great example of, and this is not a basic human need, but how they democratized the entire music industry, right? So before, and not only what they did for demand, but what they did for all these new artists to come up out of nowhere. If you think about how rigid the record industry was, where the only songs that you really knew were the things that came onto the radio, and they were hand chosen for you by the powers that be, and eventually they trickled down, and those were the things that you'd listen to, whatever handful of songs it was at that moment. Now you've completely democratized the music industry with Napster and these original peer-to-peer sharing networks, where it was an insane disruption. I mean, it caused so many issues and so much pushback. But look what happened is it actually democratized the entire music industry by allowing people to share digitally music, which cost next to nothing, only to take account for the intellectual property, which was the main reason that there was so much pushback from it. But in turn, that actually ended up helping the artists, because then they were able to, their music got out there more widely, they book more live shows, and that's where they make the bulk of their real money, that and the merch. So democratization is a huge demand for it. And the more we can find ways to apply this to the products that we're developing, that we're productizing right now, the more we're going to actually have a huge leg up on our competition. And I think it's one of the best things that you can do right now. So again, things can be done much cheaper digitally than traditionally. Think, how can I digitally really cut this price point down to the point where we're democratizing this? And this is game over, right? Because that's the wave. That's where we're going. And not only is that good for you as a company, but think about what that's doing for us as humanity. Allowing us all to have the basic needs, and also have levels of abstraction like music, allow for a petri dish of all of these new artists to surface themselves, allowing for new creativity and new artists to surface themselves, and then allow us to be inspired by new artists, and this tremendous exponential effect of growth that we're undergoing right now. Democratize your products. Democratize the products, all of them, because it's a need. And it's taking us to the next level. Huge for us, for our businesses, for our culture, for humanity. right now. Enormous, huge. And again, thanks so much for listening. The topic for today was democratization as a goal. Really think about it. I urge you to really think about it. Really mull it over. Figure out how you can do this. Incorporate this into your companies. And I feel it's going to be so effective for you. I think it's one of the best things you can do is figure out if you want to be on this train right now. Understand that theme. Understand that idea. Figure out how you can make use of it, because I think it is a huge, huge sweeping idea right now. And again, the companies that have this ingrained in them, those are going to be winners. I mean, that is a huge, huge leg up and a huge differentiator. So really think about it. Let it sink in. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Again, it's been Jonathan Furman from Furman Transformation Podcast. We're a growth agency, work mainly with growth stage tech companies, helping them, taking them to the next level, whether that be in the productizing portion or the marketing portion or the PR portion. I mean, we're huge in PR and positioning. That's a huge thing for us. So, if that's where you're at, and a lot of these you may not be looking to do the marketing right away because it's not an instant sale, but you want to start to really get your name out there and in a really good way, in a strong way, in a reliable way. That's what we do. We're tremendous on really effective PR, but PR for growth, not just PR for the sake of PR. And then also sales engine, marketing engine, PR, product solutions. We do it all. And that's our goal, is the growth engine. Again, it's one thing. It's growth. It's business development and growth. We're not trying to come in and code for you or do any kind of technical aspects. We're going to take every aspect of biz dev that we feel comfortable with, that we see an opportunity, and we're going to take that and we're going to make that into something better. That's what we do here at Furman Transformation, is we help you grow. So if that sounds of interest to you, you reach out, give me a call. I would love to hear from you. Again, we do free consultations. I'm open anytime. You want to give me a call, you can give me a call. It's 561-571-0638. Again, Jonathan Furman, Furman Transformation, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks so much.